Ellsworth City Council meeting Monday, June 9th, 2023. All councilors are present. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rules of order. We follow Robert's Rules of Order and any other rules that the council adopts along the way. Councilor Stein, you wanted to make a statement?
Good evening. It's June 19th. Some of you may have noticed some institutions closed today. This is a federal holiday called Juneteenth, officially Juneteenth National Independence Day in the United States, commemorating the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, deriving its name from combining June and 19th. It's celebrated on the anniversary of the order by Major Granger proclaiming freedom for slaves in Texas on June 19th, 1865. This is 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. Originating in Galveston, Juneteenth has been observed annually in various parts of the United States, often broadly celebrating African American and Black culture. The day was first recognized as a federal holiday in 2021. This is off of Wikipedia, but I encourage you to delve in deeper, if you will. There was an incredible event celebrating at Knowlton Park today. You can go to juneteenthdowneast.org. WERU, our local radio station, did a live recording, and that'll be available there. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4, adoption of the Ellsworth City Council minutes from the following meetings: May 8th, 2023, special meeting minutes; May 15th, 2023, regular meeting minutes; June 5th, 2023, special meeting minutes; and June 5th, 2023, emergency meeting minutes.
So moved.
You have a motion?
Second.
A second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 5, City Manager's Report. Manager Mosier.
Good evening, Council. Just have a few things to update you on. Upcoming closures: city facilities and the library will be closed Tuesday, July 4th in observance of Independence Day. City facilities and the library will close at noontime on Friday, July 28th for the annual Employee Appreciation Cookout. The rain date for that is August 18th. The clerk's office would like me to remind everyone that the school budget election is June 29th. Absentee ballots are available through the clerk's office through June 26th. And it's that time of year again for ATV and boats for re-registration. Rapid renewal is now back online for vehicle registration renewal. This can be accessed through the city's online services webpage. Many of you may have recalled last year with the switch to the new software, everyone had to come in and do it in person, but now it's back online. RF Jordan is still on schedule to begin work on Christian Ridge Road in mid-July, so pay attention to traffic announcements, and there will be signage alerting folks as to when that exact construction will begin on Christian Ridge Road. And the temporary repair of the Branch Lake has been completed. It was completed in May. The water level, thanks to Mother Nature, has risen about a foot from the winter level where we had to have it for leak purposes, but also what we maintain for winter levels. The dam is closed with the exception of a small amount of water that's allowed to flow for the Branch Lake stream. And we're hopeful that with the rain that we've had, that boating will be able to be enjoyed this summer on Branch Lake without a lot of the concerns that we were facing just a few weeks ago when the water level was significantly lower. And that is all I have for this evening.
Any questions? All right. Item 6, committee reports. Any councilors attend committees that they'd like to report out on? Councilor Stein?
The Solid Waste Committee did not meet, but we finally finished our application, so keep an eye on the city website. Applications will go live for the Solid Waste Committee. We've got some exciting things planned, and you can join myself and Councilor Moat. We're going to do great work.
And I guess I'll report from the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. We had a kickoff meeting at it was in the Franklin Parklet, right? I was at work, so it was on Friday afternoon, so that was a great start for starting to get input from citizens about the comprehensive plan. And the Communications Committee met last week on June 12th and talked about a variety of different ways to improve communication with the community, including working on the city calendar, having a rotating department reports, other ideas that we're thinking of to communicate important updates with citizens.
I have a couple of committees. The Finance Committee has met 3 out of the last 4 Fridays. We've been mostly talking about, obviously, the audit, receiving updates from the Finance Director about where the audit is and when we should receive the 22 audit so that we can start on the 23 audit. And then also discussing reports, organization of reports and information that should be coming to the Finance Committee once the audit is complete and our numbers are updated. We also, tonight, when we discuss the ARPA funds, the Finance Committee has a recommendation for that. And then the Harbor Commission, I was unable to attend the meeting, but I have been speaking with the committee members, and they had asked me to just provide a little information on their next project that's actually in collaboration with the Partners of the Union River. I didn't know we had a Partners of the Union River, but I do now. And they are a group that is a 501c3 that was created last year, and their mission is to ensure the public use and the rehabilitation of the Ellsworth waterfront. And they will be coming to the council next month. They have a plan for signage. It's interpretive educational signs in Harbor Park to focus on the history of the harbor and waterfront and provide information on the wildlife of the river. This is a project that they're not going to be asking the council for money for. They're going to raise it themselves through grants and public funds, but they would like to come next month and ask for permission to do this project. That's it for me.
The other reports. Just have one, Superintendent Bowles, who commentary, I think, is doing an exceptional job of really breaking down the silos and working as a whole city and including all sides of the city involved. And so she is asking for representation from the council on 3 different committees. One is the HCTC Building Committee. Another one is the Ellsworth School Strategic Plan, and then the last one is the preschool committee. So we're looking for one counselor to participate in each one of those committees. So with that, do any of you have an immediate?
I'd be on the preschool committee.
Thank you.
I'll do the HCTC.
And the strategic plan, anybody interested in that?
Okay.
You were sitting next to me when we kicked you.
Yeah, I know.
Good choice. She said that's going to be easy.
Okay.
Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you all. My heart was pounding.
We knew who we were going to go to next,
Can't take it.
Mr. Committee. All right. Item 7 is citizens' comments. This is a portion of the agenda where citizens can make a comment. You have 3 minutes to speak on any topic you wish. If there's an agenda item that you wish to speak to, you can wait for that item to come up, and you'll have an opportunity at that point to talk about that specific item. Or you can choose to use this 3 minutes to talk about an agenda item if you're not going to be sticking around, or you just wanted to get out in front of that item. We'll leave that to you. So with that, if you'd like to speak, just go to the podium and state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, councilors and tax-paying citizens of Ellsworth. I'm John Linehan, 157 Shore Road, lifetime Ellsworth resident. I'm here to address what, in my opinion, is the lack of justice displayed by Judge Bruce Maloney, who was supposed to be presiding over the civil suit brought by Councilor Steve O'Halloran and 3 local business owners. The headline in the Ellsworth American read, "Judge dismisses suit over new PD." I have no problem if the suit was dismissed over legal issues. I do have a problem if the suit was dismissed over a technicality commonly referred to as a lack of legal standing. The actual illegal activities issues brought against the city were never addressed. These real, genuine, illegal issues, to briefly summarize, were listed in the paper accurately as follows. Number 1, the city failed to give appropriate legal public notice to the proposal to lease new space for the police department. Number 2, the city did not follow its own procurement policy that requires a bid process for services that cost more than $15,000. Maloney explained in his decision, in his sole opinion, that local taxpayers did not have sufficient personal stake in this controversy to obtain a court decision on the issues. Councilors, my fellow citizens and taxpayers of Ellsworth, this is not justice either by the basic legal system or by the original intent of our U.S. Constitution. Because of Maloney's weak interpretation of in-standing, which in my opinion was a very minor technicality at best, he never allowed the real legal issues as listed above to be addressed in a court of law for a legal conclusion. The need for adequate and appropriate space for police department is long overdue and sadly has not been properly handled by past city councils. However, this lack of transparency, improperly rushed, mishandled, and illegal process that our current city leadership has recently gone through hopefully will never be repeated again in our city. In conclusion, if this council had acted legally originally, the city probably would be millions of dollars ahead now by owning its own brand new police department. EPD could possibly be in a better location instead of leasing older, renovated space and additionally spending over $1 million of our city money to renovate a leased facility owned by someone else. My fellow citizens, that makes no financial sense whatsoever. Special thank you to Councilor Steve O'Halloran for bringing this issue to the public's attention at considerable personal expense of his own time and his own money. I encourage the council to entertain a motion to repay Councilor O'Halloran for his legal expenses just as the city has had to pay for the city's attorney. Justice on this issue has not been served to this point for Ellsworth taxpayers. At least reimburse Steve and thank him for his service. If he had appealed Judge Mahoney's in-standing decision, which he could have and probably should have done, the city would have had to spend even more taxpayer money to defend its illegal position. Plus, Ellsworth would still be running the high risk of losing
3 minutes.
instead of that.
3
Not
minutes.
serve the legal standing issue.
Your 3 minutes are up. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Anybody else like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Cara Romano. I'm the director of Heart of Ellsworth, our downtown organization. I'm here this evening to talk about our business benefits new webpage that we launched that serves the downtown businesses and other entrepreneurs in the area who interface with downtown. The pamphlet that you have before you was created after the webpage was created, which there's a button on the webpage where you can download this pamphlet as well. This sort of outlines how we assist downtown businesses in the downtown district. Last Wednesday, we held our first monthly coffee and donuts event in the Franklin Street Parklet. And in addition to the many businesses that have used our form on the website, there's been a sort of consistent things that the downtown businesses are asking for that I know that city officials and other city staff are working on, but I just want to sort of highlight a couple of those so that we're all sort of on the same page of what we're hearing as the downtown organization. We had over 25 people attend the coffee and donuts, and we had a lot of feedback on what it is that folks are looking for. And so part of what folks are sort of looking for And we have been clear that these things take time, and trying to get folks to also perhaps say how they could help bring some of these things to fruition. One of them is wayfinding signage. The second is additional trash cans and recycle containers on Main Street and side streets. And the last one is a public restroom. I know all three of these are sort of larger things that take time and a lot of money, but Heart of Ellsworth is here to assist in whatever ways it is that we as an organization, whether it's leveraging funds, which was spoken about earlier for another group, leveraging funds out in Maine and perhaps places from far beyond, that to help these three things come to fruition. But a part of that is Heart of Ellsworth and the Board of Directors are really looking forward to assisting city staff and with the business attraction plan and the comprehensive planning process. And so however our organization can be of help with both of those two initiatives that are on the table right now this year for the city, we would appreciate being asked to be involved in those things. And we also wanted to just extend an invite to council members to join us for our next Coffee and Donuts event, which is happening July 19th from 8:30 to 9:30 in the Parklet. So, and if there are any questions about the pamphlet, the business benefits pamphlet, also happy to answer them, or any business questions or any other questions, happy to answer them as well. But, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Good evening. See a couple I recognize on the council. I'm here because of the roads in this town. I'm glad you said something about Crescent Ridge, but my truck is getting beat to crap because of these roads. I just wonder if they're gonna do any more work, like State Street, Water Street, they're all horrible. Go down Water Street, you got a big pothole, you can see the cement. I go like 5, maybe 10 miles an hour, even slower. People behind me getting aggravated. It's just, I'm concerned about the roads. And businesses are gonna start losing money, I'm sure, because I bypass town. I go down Water Street and hit Bayside Road just to stay out of town, because it's so horrible. Is there anything gonna be done besides Christian Ridge Road? That's all the question I have, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Seeing none. Item 8, presentation of awards. We have one presentation this evening, and the second one we will move until next meeting. So I'd like to call up Captain Sean Willey. The City of Ellsworth proudly presents the certificate of service to Captain Sean Willey in recognition of your 20 years of service to the City of Ellsworth Police Department. Your devotion to duty and loyalty to the community have contributed to the improvement of the City of Ellsworth, presented this 19th day of June 2023. Item 9, discussion to broadcast Finance Committee meetings, sponsored by Councilor Hanson.
Well, I think I just looked at the last meeting minutes and the end with Glenn saying, I can explore those and bring them back. I can explore those ideas and bring them back.
So I have had conversations with IT, and they can show me how to video record. Broadcasting requires somebody in the booth, so they would have to be present to do that. We can record, as we have been doing with the audio, we can record audio and video and then have that available for folks if they wanted it. We can push that out to council like we currently do with the audio. Some of that, I mean, ultimately the decision is the council's. It's your meeting, so to what extent you want to broadcast or record is entirely up to you. All of it is doable. So if you decide to broadcast, that does potentially come with the cost of the employee coming in to do that. But there's there's ways that we can work around that as well, if that's the decision that the council makes regarding that. The only kind of thing I would point out is just the slippery slope, because we don't broadcast any of the committee meetings. So if we start to, with doing one, and then the expectation is that we begin doing others, then it does become somewhat of a burden on the staff to have a staff member here, 2 or 3 nights a week, every night of the week, broadcasting these different committees, whether it be the harbor committee or what have you. So that's one thing that I would just caution you on when we talk about broadcasting of committee meetings. But if it's the wish of the council, then we can and will make it happen.
I guess I think that the Finance Committee meeting is kind of a different committee than the other committees, and a lot of really important conversation happens during them. I mean, this originally came up because I wish I could see them, but they happen at a bad time for my work schedule. I have found the audio recordings that get sent later just are not helpful. So anyways, I would be in favor not of recording every committee, but of recording the Finance Committee. I could even make a motion for it. I would make a motion to record and broadcast the Finance Committee meetings.
Is that a motion?
That was a motion.
Okay.
Just
I think
looking
so.
for- Yeah, just looking for a second.
I'd second that.
Second, further discussion.
Has any other counselor had any requests from their respective committees to broadcast? I have not on my 1,000 committees, but I don't know if anybody else has. It could happen, but I just don't, I don't think it has happened yet.
I think it really could with, your comprehensive plan committee meetings. Those should be very interesting to the public. If we do a new charter commission, that absolutely will be another one that people will want to see. This gentleman would probably like to see the local roads committee meetings so they could decide, so he'd have an understanding of which roads are being discussed for renovation. So I think it is a slippery slope. If it's videotaped and then put out, I mean, absolutely, but I don't think that asking staff to come in for a 7 a.m. meeting to broadcast it live is necessary. If you want to see it after you can't watch it anyway because you can't.
Well, I
listen
could
to
if it
the
was
audio.
broadcast. If it was broadcast the way this meeting is broadcast, then yeah, I could just turn it on.
Well, except that we offered to have you call in and listen to it.
Yeah, no,
and
I
be
could
part
do,
of it.
I could do that also.
Yeah.
I
So-
would just prefer to broadcast it.
I personally don't think it's fair to the staff to ask them to do that, because it will. We do have some important stuff that's coming up that could very well be asked to broadcast. And we only have 2 people in there that can do that.
If we recorded audio and video and made that available later without broadcasting live, that wouldn't necessarily take an additional staff person?
No, they can, IT can, we already recorded. The video is just a small additional step that I can do in the morning when I come in and we start the meeting. And then that video file, much like the audio file, would be put into that drive where you all have access to it. And then, like Mr. Linehan today requested an audio file, and that was sent out to him today. So we're able to process those, requests relatively easily. It's just it's just the broadcasting that requires the physical presence of a person in the IT office to make that happen.
Councilman O'Hara.
I'd just like to throw out the idea that, I don't know what the cost is, but I think we've had many conversations about being open to the community and getting community involvement. And I realize that picking one committee is going to eventually lead to probably all committees. I respect that. But isn't transparency what we're after, or what the citizens deserve, if they so choose to watch, whether it's after the fact or during? I realize it could come a cost, but with all we ask of our taxpayers, an open book, I think, is a healthy solution.
I agree with that 100%. It's just, I don't think it's, I mean, if you videotape it and you put it out there on our YouTube channel for anybody to watch when they can, because 7 a.m. on Friday morning, I'm not positive how many people you're gonna get to watch that broadcast anyway.
Correct.
Well, I'm sure you do, and I'm sure Mr. Linehan does, because you come to every meeting, but 2 people out of 8,400 in the city that are doing it, you know, it's available, they can see it.
It would be on the YouTube page?
Could be, yeah.
Because the
That's-
audio file you've been sending is just really clunky and hard to, it takes quite a few steps. So if it was on the YouTube page, like really I could just find it the way I find any meeting.
Yeah, once it's.
That would be better than.
Yeah, once it's recorded, putting it on one of those platforms is not a problem. We just have not been doing that because that wasn't what was requested, so.
Councilor Harlot?
I'm in favor of that. Just making it available, it doesn't have to be live. As long as it's available for people to see. I agree with Michelle. If you're gonna get up and watch the television at 7 in the morning, then maybe you could come to the meeting if you wanted to. But having it available after the fact for anyone to go view, much like the city council meeting, I'm in favor of that as opposed to a live feed business.
Councilor Hanson, do you want to modify your motion?
Make a friendly amendment to myself. No,
You want to leave it? No, you can leave it.
I'm gonna leave it.
Okay. I would just, I like the idea of putting it on YouTube after the fact, so that, because either way, it's gonna go on YouTube. If we videotape it, whether it's live or not, it's gonna go on YouTube. Most people are gonna view it after the fact. Many people do that now, the school board, other meetings. So I think starting it out, doing it that way, and then as this discussion evolves in terms of other committees, there's some logistical issues in terms of scheduling. We have different meetings that are held in this room. This is the only room where videotape can happen, so there are committee meetings that take place outside of the chambers. So it would give some time at least to think through, but at the same time have that transparency, put that up there. So. Any other discussion?
What was the motion again?
The motion is to video,
Broadcast.
to have it broadcast live. That's the motion.
Logistically, if this motion doesn't pass, will the counselor have the opportunity to make a addition, or will
Council,
this
we can make motions all night long.
motions all day? Okay.
Got nothing but time.
Just in theory. You're right.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion to broadcast the Finance Committee meeting? All those opposed?
Okay, I'll make a new motion. I move to videotape and put on our city council YouTube page the finance committee meetings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Consent agenda. The consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and ordered considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 10, Council Order Number 062300, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to set the real estate and personal property tax due dates at September 14th, 2023 and March 14th, 2024. Item 11, Council Order Number 062301, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector for an order of the municipal officers on the application of real estate and personal property tax payments. This order will allow for the tax collector and treasurer to apply tax payments against the oldest unpaid tax bills.
Move approval of the consent agenda as presented?
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. New business, public hearing and action on the applications for a new or renewal of the following licenses. Madam Clerk, is everything in order? Anything new, or are these all renewals?
The last one is new, and I did not see him.
So if there isn't anyone here, we will need to table that, correct?
Correct.
All right. First one is provide a Vice Strit Young, DBA Thai Sana, 321 High Street for renewal of a city Class C licensed liquor and victualler and renewal of a state restaurant malt and vinous Class 3 and 4 liquor license. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anybody would like to comment, they may do so at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve the license.
Second?
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Sugar Mag Central LLC, DBA Sugar Mags, 142A Main Street for renewal of a city Class A amusement food arcade and mobile vending. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. Would anybody like to comment on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Zeppa's New York Pizza, 92 Water Street for renewal of a city Class C liquor victualler and renewal of a state liquor license Class 3 and 4. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anybody would like to comment on this, they may do so. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Fogtown Brewing, 25 Pine Street for renewal of a city Class B licensed liquor, victualler, amusement, and renewal of a state brewing license. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is open. If anybody would like to speak on this, they may do so at this time. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Have a motion
Second?
and a second. Any comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? An obvious conflict.
Why? Why?
Questions?
We won't even ask you what the conflict is. Motion passes. Lynn LLC DBA Forest Ridge Campground, 40 Flockamoose Way for a new city lodging license. This public hearing, open the oh, this is the one
I
that.
don't see anybody.
No one is here. So I will not open the public hearing. We
Can I
will.
ask why this is new? Is it-
They've got rental cabins now,
Oh,
so they've kind of crested the campground thing to like a lodging
oh, I got you.
facility.
Have they been contacted that they know they needed to? Okay.
So we.
But it is a holiday, and they may have thought that I gave them the incorrect date.
So we can't take it up this evening because they need to be present. However, with that said, given the nature of their business, if you can contact them, if you find that this is going to present any kind of problem for them as a business, please let me know. We'll call an emergency meeting to have a public hearing, because we don't want that to create a problem. I'm assuming that's okay with everybody.
Can do.
Thank you. All right, item 13, council order number 062302, appointment of city officials by the city council. These are reappointments. Just have to go through my paper here. That's the entire list, correct?
No, just one more page. I don't have the last page.
You have your appointments.
Correct.
Item 14 is separate.
Yeah.
Page 46 and 47.
Yes. So that list is in your packet. What I would request is that if, when a motion is made, that we hold off on the Board of Appeals member pending resolution of an issue, and then we'll take that up at the next council meeting. Would you like me to go through the list, or have you had a chance to?
Do we approve it as a whole?
As a whole. With that exception, I would ask that the motion be made to accept all appointments with the exception of the Board of Appeals member.
Motion to approve all of the below with the exception of the Board of Appeals member, which will be taken up next month.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Councilor O'Fallon.
Can you elaborate on why we're setting aside the Board of Appeals?
Just, there's a internal matter that we need to resolve before we can take it up. And that will be happening, so. And then we can bring it back to the July meeting.
So what happens after June 30th?
There's no appeals scheduled. There's no meetings of the appeals board scheduled between now and the July meeting. So
Okay.
we have time to resolve the matter before July.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 14, Council Order Number 062303, approval of city managers' appointments, reappointments. Those are also in the packets.
Move to approve the city manager's appointments.
Second.
We have a motion and seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Item 15, Council Order Number 062304, request of the Deputy Treasurer Tax Collector to set the interest rate at 6% on overdue taxes.
Good evening. I'm Sue McLean, the tax collector. It's that time of year again. I have to come before you and ask you about setting the interest rate. Last year, we had it at 4%. That was the maximum that the treasurer of the state allowed us to have. This year, we can go up to 8%, but I'm asking for 6%. I think going from 4 to 8 is a really big jump. So I thought maybe halfway. So I'm asking to go with a 6% interest rate on overdue taxes for the fiscal year of 2024.
Discussion. Councilor O'Fallon.
Is there any process in place or hardship situations that there is some flexibility here at your discretion or not?
In the interest rate?
Yeah.
No.
No, not in the interest
Oh.
rate, but in the process of some delinquent tax that might need some help.
Yeah, we have poverty abatements, there are some different options that I put out to people. If they call and they're having an issue, I will go through all of the options and send them whatever applications. I very rarely get them back. I think in the last 2 years, maybe one. And then at the last minute, they paid it off and we didn't go anywhere with it. But there are options, yeah. And I do talk to them about it.
So it's not just a slap, it's something that you can work with other tools in hardship situations.
Yes, but the interest, there isn't any way to just freeze the interest. But there's ways to get them help, to get the taxes paid off quicker than if it was left to them alone, knowing that they can't afford it. But I can't stop the interest from building up in the meantime.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And just for the council who hasn't been through it, because I don't think we've had a situation for a while, but the council also can get involved. It's part of the process where somebody can come before the council to request relief in terms of tax abatement. So that there's a whole process where that can happen and where the council actually becomes involved at that point.
And is that something that you would walk these people through if that was the case?
That's some of the paperwork that I send them, yes.
Thank you.
The reason for the state increase to 8%, is it an interest rate tied to the federal, or is it?
Yeah, it's the prime rate published in the Wall Street Journal, the first day in January, first printed day in January. And they set it, and then the state lets us know what it is. We can't go over that, but we can do anything under.
You know, for me, I mean, 4%'s a reasonable interest rate. If somebody's having difficulty paying their taxes, you know, that 2% difference isn't going to push people to pay it any sooner. And the goal of the city isn't to, you know, be punitive, it's to help people. And then there's a whole process if people are unable to do it. So I'm not sure that increasing it, I don't know what the gain is, and I don't know if that actually creates a bigger hardship for individuals. So I don't know, I'm mixed on whether we really need to increase it or not, just because it's not tied to anything other than just an incentive to push people to pay the bill. I was waiting.
Thank you.
We just looked at each other. I know. So the reason that you do put it a little higher is because we pay in 2 installments, and we do that in order to keep our cash flow and not to have to use a TAN. And what happens is if your interest rate is lower than the rate that a person can invest, it's cheaper for them to pay those, not pay those taxes until March, and so we don't get that cash flow. So that's the reason why we don't want to always go to the maximum, but we just want to make sure that we're not helping someone invest their money on taxpayer dollars.
I wasn't thinking about that side of the point. That is a good point. Thank you.
I was wondering if there was, my mind was going there as well, but I'm wondering, is there, okay, there's interest for delinquent taxes. Are there penalties and other things, or is there simply just interest so that 4% is a bargain, 8% is a deterrent?
Well, there's,
To your point?
not until you hit liens. I mean,
Okay.
it's just.
It's simply
the interest, right, yeah.
Councilor Beal, you were effective.
How many people in Ellsworth are not paying their taxes just to make money off the interest? I doubt there's very many.
Is more than you would think,
Really?
yeah.
I would be in favor of leaving it at 4.
Would 6% be enough to avoid that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the, people put it in CDs for 6 months or whatever, 6% would do it. But, and the other thing is it's usually the higher taxes that are the ones that are held, which hurt us even more. And there is help for people that can't, pay their taxes. And this only really affects people that don't have mortgages, because mortgages either are paid by the bank, or if they get delinquent, the bank takes them over and then pays the interest. So it's
Yeah, and the
it's
bank-
more of a minimum of the people that end up having to pay the interest that can't afford it.
Right, and the banks will call just to kind of double check that it's been paid, even though it maybe isn't escrowed. And it's not uncommon to receive a check from a bank and to pay it, just to make sure it doesn't go to lien or foreclose or anything. So,
Councilor O'Hara.
I'd just like to ask you, who lives this daily life, do you see any strategic mindsets of people using the city's money for bitter gain through this whole process?
I have to say that I do see that it tends to be the bigger, higher taxed homes that wait. And they may call, I'll get a phone call and they want to know what's the date it's going to lien. They're going to get me a check just before it goes to lien. So that makes me wonder. I've not had anybody tell me, obviously, that that's what they're doing, but I do get a lot of those calls. And they are, 95% are the higher taxed homes.
Businesses?
Some. I mean, I couldn't name any, but.
I'm not asking you for that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a strategy out there. to use the city's-
I couldn't really tell you.
Well, you've been, told me enough.
But
appreciate
I mean,
your-
I'm just talking opinion and what I deal with. But I do get those phone calls and it makes you wonder.
Is there any precedent for having varying rates depending on the tax amount, sort of like we do for income? Sort of that.
Good Lord, no.
Well, sounds complicated.
It would that, I mean, yeah, it would be difficult, I think. I'm,
Probably a legal issue.
Yeah. the
Yeah.
State statute probably. doesn't allow
yeah.
Bad ideas and brainstorming.
I'm thinking that higher income people probably buy nicer homes and maybe their income ain't, you know, I think 4%.
Could we get your input? Glenn's input on?
I don't really have an opinion, quite honestly, Steve. I mean, I think that Michelle's point is a valid one. There's probably not a significant amount of people that do that, but I'm sure it does happen. And I would defer to the tax collector regarding, you know, the status of how often she gets questioned about the interest.
And is there anybody from the public who wanted to speak? Okay. All right, is there a motion?
Move to approve the request of the tax collector / deputy treasurer to set the interest rate on overdue taxes at 6%.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 16, public hearing and action on budget resolutions for FY 2024. So just process piece so that everybody's clear on this. What we will do is I will open the public hearing first and allow the public to make comments on the budget. I will then close the public hearing, and then the council will take it from there in terms of discussing the budget and moving it forward. At that point, there will be no more public comments. So as soon as I open up the public hearing, that will be your opportunity to speak on the budget. We won't be engaging back and forth at that point. We've had many budget meetings, and at this point, we're at the point of pulling that all together. So with that said, I will open the public hearing on budget resolution. This is a public hearing. Public hearing is open. Anybody that wishes to speak on anything related to the budget may do so at this time. Just go to the podium, state your name, and you'll have an opportunity to speak.
John Lindquist, the Executive Director of Friends in Action. Just like to explain a little bit more. We increased our request this year from the 6,200 that we got last year to 10,000 this year. Wanted to explain that 6,200 is the amount we've been getting since 2018. And although we're very appreciative, you know, we're not, but our expenses have gone up right along with inflation since then. It's been 2% a year, most years, lately 8%. Just to refresh, our mission is to enable senior residents of Hancock County to live independently and thrive. 73% of the things that we do affect Ellsworth residents, not other parts of the county. All of the funds, regardless of whether it's whatever amount you give us, will be put 100% to the direct expenses of coordinating our transportation services and our senior center services. There are 453 Ellsworth residents who are registered to use our services, which resulted just on the transportation side in 4,358 trips. And that's just Ellsworth citizens taking those trips. And it equated to, or added up to 40,000 miles. In addition, there are 304 businesses, including medical offices and retail businesses, that we carry people to, from outside, from within and outside Ellsworth. We also, in 2022, delivered 30,000 hot meals to residents at a minor charge. It cost, in 2022, the charge was $4 a meal. In 2023, our costs have been increased, and it's now $5 a meal. If the 3,800 is not approved, one measure is that it will reduce the number of trips to doctor's offices, other appointments, shopping to get food, delivery of prescriptions, and reduce it by at least 152 trips, which is fairly significant. We have reduced, in order to handle the increase in costs, we have reduced our budget by $111,000. And we're down to the point that there's, not much more that we can do other than start paring back some of the services. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Johnson. I'm here tonight representing Eastern Area Agency on Aging. I was asked to provide my services tonight for any questions. I don't have any news from when I was here last time, other than it's full speed ahead for us. We are reopening cafes and other services throughout the four-county area that we serve. As a reminder for the value that we provide for the area of Ellsworth, we sent the board a sheet indicating a value of $97,000 for our services here at Ellsworth. We are asking for more this year. We've asked for $1,350. And I understand it's difficult. I can't make any promises or anything as a result of any holding the line at 1,000. I understand that. I do want to make sure that you folks understand that we don't compete with this gentleman. We work together with these folks. We provide a lot of different services. We're back after COVID, like so many of us are. COVID really knocked us for a loop. But we're back out and we're reorganizing, and we hope to be in more contact with you folks as the year goes on, rather than just having me come or somebody else come once a year and request money. So you will be seeing more of us in the near future. So thank you for whatever you can do, and I understand whatever you do is appreciated. Thank you.
John Linehan, Ellsworth. What is the total increase for the budget, percentage-wise? Do you have that figure right there?
What, the proposed?
Yes.
Tony's looking at it.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared for that.
We've got 17.38% here on this list, but that's before city revenues
Right.
offset it. Okay.
Is there a bottom line increase, with the revenues and the expenses to offset, so if there's one figure that would be applicable to the budget,
I've got
the proposed budget?
13.
I could read what's on this list. And there's been some minor adjustments, but last year, amount to be raised by taxes was 20, this includes the school, was $21,690,860. And this year is $24,253,391.
So you're looking just for the city side or the, as a whole?
I'd take either one at this point. If you could do the
Okay.
city or the school or the total,
The total is what we have here, but there has been some
The
adjustments
total's
since this
fine.
was
And
printed.
yeah, and that's what we're gonna be
right,
deep diving
right.
into.
I understand it's a work in process, Merle. I'm just trying to get an approximate idea.
Yep, that's total,
Okay.
what you just heard is.
So
school.
percentage-wise, you're talking how much approximately, Steve?
I'm calculating right now.
10%, 12%?
We got the accountant on it.
Based on those figures you just gave me. 11.8.
How much?
11.8.
Okay. I mean, I was guessing approximately 10.
I
See,
just got about 10, so I think we're on the same track and
Okay.
page there.
I'm opposed to any increase in the budget. I'm for prioritizing, reallocating, and really looking at things, and I'm not saying that you don't do that, but budgeting is always a tricky thing. And that's a big increase for the city of, or for any organization in the city of Ellsworth. And so I'm opposed to any increase over what it was last year. 10% is a large increase, or 11, or whatever it is like that. So I would like to see flat line, the budget remain the same, the amount remain the same, with no increase for this year. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Cara Romano, Director of Heart of Ellsworth. I just have a quick question, a process question that I'm trying to sort of understand. In past years, sometimes when Heart of Ellsworth has received appropriations, we have just received a check in the mail, and that's how it works. And then other years, we've had to submit invoices that total our budget or requested amount. And I'm just wondering how that gets allocated and what that process is. And is there a process sort of across the board that all special interest groups, I think that's what they're called, I'm not sure, but special interest groups, that they each are all sort of treated the same across the board? Is there a standard procedure? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so, the answer is if an organization is receiving funding for specific activities, that's generally reimbursed on, invoices in terms of, the activity happens and invoices are submitted and paid. If organizations are supported kind of as a general support, then that's generally paid out either in 2 installments, beginning of the year and the end of the year, or if it's a small amount at one time. So that's generally the case. It depends on the nature of what the request is and what the allocation is for. If it's, and sometimes it's in advance, so if an organization is sponsoring XYZ and they know what those costs are and they submit the costs on the front end, they might receive that, so. Does that help?
Sure.
So no.
Well, I guess I just,
Isn't it up to Ann?
sorry, I know. I guess just to clarify, what I think I'm also wondering is this sort of, I know that there's a lot of changes that are happening in this for fiscal year 2025, or at least that's what I'm, right? Okay, and so I'm wondering, is there going to sort of be a direction of how special interest groups formulate their requests And so there's sort of, are there gonna, and you may not know the answer to this, but are there going to be two different tracks that folks are suggested to sort of go down, or are you looking to streamline that? And again, you may not know the answer to that yet, but
I mean, for the next budget cycle?
yes.
Oh.
Sorry, I know no one's thinking about that. Forget it, I'll come back and ask.
Yes.
Okay, sure.
There has been discussion about that. No decisions have been made, but trying to organize it better so that it's clearer for anybody in the community to know the process. That's absolutely been the discussion that we've had several times during this cycle, with the goal of next year having more definition to it. And I think Councilor Stein will have some information on that later too, and the thought process.
As well as inviting organizations to come back throughout the year and give progress reports and let us know what's changed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Others?
Might as well talk about the roads some more. I can't believe anybody in this room likes driving around this town, so there must be a budget for the roads. I know you're working on the Kristen Ridge Road. Recently, I had to have put new shocks on my truck. One broke, on the rear shock, from this town, which cost me $150 for the shocks. Thankfully, my son did it, replaced them for nothing. But anyways, it's just, is there a budget? I mean, how bad the road's gonna get before they get fixed? Like that pothole down there, that's horrendous. And I won't go up State Street. My daughter lives out by the high school. She works at Kidsby's. Very nice job she has, been there for like 3 years. I won't go up State Street. I go up to the light and go that way, which is not that good either, but better than State Street. Water Street, horrendously horrible. But that's the quickest way for me to get out of town, because I work in Bar Harbor right now. I go down, like I said, Bayside Road, so I can bypass town. Roma Joe's, I go there quite a bit. They were wondering where I've been. Well, the roads are horrible. I want to bypass this town. I don't want to spend I do spend money in this town. Most of it goes in this town. It's where I shop. I live in Blue Hill. But that's the route I take every day. But I got to bypass this town because the roads are horrible. Like, I went by Eldine yesterday. Well, day it rains so hard, whatever. I was on the left side, because I won't be on the right side because it's horrible there. Somebody went by me in a car. My windshield got covered in rain, of course. I lost sight of the road for a couple seconds. What if somebody in front of me put on their brakes? Well, I hit my brakes because I couldn't see the road, of course, because my windshield was covered in, water. Well, what are we going to do? Somebody's got to get hurt one of these days because of this. The roads around here are horrible. So I appreciate let me have my speech, but is there any money for the road?
Yeah, so if you're able to stay, you're going to hear that. In fact, a large percentage of the proposed city side is in roads.
Right.
So you'll hear that. If you can't stay, it will be posted, it will be online on Facebook, and you'll be able to hear it. So if you're not able to stay, by all means, watch the discussion, because you'll hear a lot about the roads here coming up.
Yeah, okay, because they can't even fill the potholes. That one down there, I think that's when my shop got broke. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. I want to talk roads, a particular road tonight, but I'm not sure that I can follow that presentation, but thank you.
Somebody's gonna say something. Somebody's gonna get hurt.
Councilors, welcome to what may be your last session of cobbling together an FY24 budget. After several long and sometimes tedious meetings of adding dollars to this and that and subtracting dollars from other accounts, you just may, after this evening, have somewhat of a personal life back to yourself to enjoy the upcoming summer. But before the summer solstice begins on Wednesday morning, marking the beginning of your family plans and get-togethers, I want to bring your attention to one more item: the condition of the hill on Birch Avenue. In short, the city is losing the battle to Mother Nature. Without corrective and proper measures, the highway crews will be there after every heavy and/or extensive rain. Is that? Okay. 3 days before the paving plants closed last November, Birch Avenue was graded, rolled, and prepped to be paved after undergoing 8 weeks of reconstruction for new water and drainage lines. That night and into the following day, the skies opened up. Thanks, Nate. And the rain came down in buckets, to the point that Noah had anchored his ark at Birch and Oak Streets, awaiting a second coming. The road was completely washed out and rendered impassable. Highways showed up later that Saturday morning and did what they could and finished the job on Monday as the paving crews were showing up. Again, keep in mind the plant was closing later that day. Then the rains of Christmas Eve came 6 weeks later. Not to be outdone by the deluge in February, and another one early last month. In these 7 months, the city has lost up to 24 inches of width of brand-new pavement that was put down in November. Pavement that cost thousands of dollars to put in place after the reconstruction. All of this could have been avoided had the city taken my long-offered advice and installed curbing on the hillside. Rather than creating very wide and very deep gullies, the running water would have been directed into catch basins. Rather than the force of the water washing out the ends of property owners' driveways, making them also impassable, the water would have been directed into catch basins. Rather than cascading rocks, gravel, and very large chunks of new and expensive pavement tumbling down the hill on Birch Avenue and plugging the tops of the catch basins, making them also useless, the water would have been directed into the catch basins. What will it take for the city to realize the cost savings of investing in curbing on hillsides? Not just Birch Avenue, but any problem hillside. How many more trips for a highway crew and the associated power equipment that comes with them to make Band-Aid repairs until the next time it rains? At least 15 years ago, Park Street, the next street over from Birch, and that has the same incline on its hillside, was rebuilt and curbing added to both sides. At the end of this photo presentation, you'll see photos that I took this morning on the effects of that decision. There is no damage. No ruined driveways, no plugged catch basins. The same holds true for the lower half of Davis Street. Approximately 12 years ago, a sidewalk and curbing were added to it as part of a walking to school grant the city received. The ball is now in the city's court. It can opt to keep kicking the can down the road and do nothing, all the while having employees come and show up to apply a Band-Aid. Or it can opt to see the results of the Park and Davis Street decisions and apply the same decision to Birch Avenue. This is the curbing on Park Street. It's been there for 15 years. It's held up. There have been no repairs made to it. Notice how the curbing curves in for the catch basin, not away from it. This is the result of doing nothing on Birch Avenue. The water comes down on the east side of the street, and just before it hits the railroad tracks, it goes next to the tracks and comes out underneath, to the point the railroad had to put in a sluice way for the water to run. The water then runs down Spring Street. That whole section of Spring Street right there has no pavement. It's washed out because of the water problem on Birch Avenue. So it isn't just the hillside on Birch. It also causes problems on the adjacent streets to it. So, thank you very much.
Anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. So we are now at the point of taking up the budget. And we have, at this point, brought it to a place to start the discussion in terms of where we ended up. The city staff has taken that information and compiled the budget so that we can pick it up from this point and move it forward. So, City Manager, I'll turn it over to you, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, so through many, many meetings, many, many workshops, what you have before you tonight is what we've come up with for a final offering, if you will. A couple of maybe somewhat significant changes since our last meeting. Many of you may recall that the Highway Department had requested an additional personnel, and then we had a couple of employees leave. Well, one of those employees has since come back, and another employee was hired directly from the transfer station. So they currently only have one vacancy. I had reduced their position to a half-year position, anticipating that it would be difficult to fill the 3 vacancies that they had. With them only having one vacancy, I think it's prudent to put that back in as a full-year position so that we can go through the hiring process and potentially have that person on board and ready for the winter season, which is for obvious reasons, their busiest time of the year. That's really the only substantial change. We did take $15,000 out of capital since our last meeting for the fire department. They had proceeds from the bond and the purchase of the rescue vehicle that was designated to go to Rescue 5, the heavy rescue truck. And the decision was made to use some of those funds to purchase the airbags that were in the capital improvement for FY24. So that purchase has been taken out of capital and has been made using bond proceeds. So those are really the 2 significant changes. The position is an addition of $27,000, which approximately half of that is offset with the $15,000 that we removed out of capital. And then there were some minor changes made to social service agencies, but I see that there's some additional potential requests here for some changes to be made there. And outside of that, the documents that you have before you is what we've worked out through all of our meetings.
I do want to add that I was just working with Tony. There were some inconsistencies in the TIF, so we did have to make some adjustments on that. So it did change that mill rate.
By 0.20.
Okay.
Ish, not significant change, but.
So I don't know if you want to, can you send that to all of us? Steve, I can share mine with you if you'd like.
So maybe the good thing to do is if we could walk through this by department in terms of just talking about what the request is for each department, because there are a couple of changes that were made earlier today as well. So we want to make sure that we're all looking at the same information, as well as allowing the public to hear some of the details by that. So if we could do that, you probably have the most current.
I would hope. I can do that.
So could you walk through that document and just say the name of the department and what the total is for each part? And then that will ground us in where the discussion.
Okay, so under administration, after a conversation with Tammy before the meeting, that's been reduced to $4,828,818. And the change there was, Jana's budget for her is funded through the TIF, and so those monies are actually in a different line on this sheet. That's the reduction there. Her department's still funded, it's just in a separate line on the sheet. I just emailed it to you all too, so you should be able to pull it up and follow along. Public safety has not made any changes since I emailed it to you last week and this morning. That is at $4,398,301. That does include street lights and traffic signals inside of that, and the rental of our hydrants. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. Public Works, increasing that to a full 12-month position brings that to $2,447,887. General assistance is at $110,208. Recreation activities is at $192,025.
Can I stop you there for a second? Just the Health and Human Services. You talked about the general assistance. Wasn't there another line item in there?
Oh, you're looking at the resolution?
Yes.
Yes, we're going through the resolution.
Yep. The other recreation items get split under the next subject. So there's Health and Human Services, which has your outside agency, which is your section 8 in your book, but then in the leisure activities below that has the rec department, and then the agency is the rec committee vets through them. So they kind of
And the
break out into
library.
2 categories, but the total for that is 192. The health and social services on there, I have a figure here, but depending on Counselor Stein's handout, he presented this earlier today, that is subject to change, which is one of the things that I have a draft version going on the side here. That right now is at $41,650. Leisure activities, the library, the city-funded portion is $625,898, and then you see there, historic preservation is for $6,000, historical society is $2,000, recreation commission is $131,650, and then the harbor is at $52,375, and those 4 items make up your recreation section 9 in your book. City property, which is all your buildings, is $357,880. Debt service, there was a change made to there in relation to the TIF at the start of the meeting, so that's been reduced to $858,868 over the 1.3, because those funds are also accounted on another sheet elsewhere for the TIF.
Could you repeat that number, please?
It's been lowered to $858,868.
Thank you.
And then your county tax has not changed, that is $586,248. So the total municipal budget, TIF, your TIF expenses on there increased to account for the full TIF from $536,035 to $1,175,581. You have capital improvements, which includes your local roads budget, which is, the only change there was the reduction of $15,000 for the fire department airbags. So the number there is $2,407,842. And then 1.9 of that is your local roads. And off to the side, you'll see the $264,108. That is not being calculated on your resolution, it's just there because those are capital projects that you, through workshops, we kind of proposed ARPA funding for those. So I wanted it noted on your resolution, but it's not taxation funds that you're using. Then you have your revenues down below there, other taxes, which are all things non-property, so vehicle excise tax, things like that is 1.844 million. You have intergovernmental revenue, 3,001,954. Licenses and permits, 339,300. Departmental income, $558,950. Other revenues, $327,300. And then the TIF revenues, this is where the offset happens, was reduced from the 1.175 million to $867,115. The two TIF numbers were just in the wrong places, so they got flopped, if that makes sense now. School department budget is $13,469,271. And so right now, with the pending changes, the final number on here was $24,253,392, and it's closer to $25 million right now. Just kind of depends on where you all go with any other changes tonight. I have $25,201,403.
And that makes the mill rate
17. 49. Yes. 17.5. Which is also an estimate.
The mill, do you have the mill rate from last year?
15.7.
Thank you.
So when we're talking about though the net change in that city budget for expenses only, be careful because it looks like because that TIF is so much more now, it makes that, because of the way the finances are looking comparatively, it's making the city look like it has a huge increase in its expenses, which it does not, only because of that comparison, because you have TIF expenses last year of $137,482, and expenses this year are 1.1 million, and there's not that much of a change in the TIF, it's just the way you recorded it, correct?
Correct. Last year, the TIF was not properly recorded in the budget process, and therefore is why the mill rate was lower than it probably should have been.
Yeah.
And
So, and
Tandy
I
might be
also-
able to speak to that more.
Yeah, so we also found that it was kind of tucked into other places, like it was covered in the debt section rather than in that TIP expense line item.
Yeah.
So, and the revenue was the same way, so.
If we retroactively correct for that, could we see a more accurate version of what last year's mill rate would have been, or is that?
The issue is though, it's been happening for a few years.
For 2
If you
years
look
now,
at
it's
your-
been,
If you look at your budget, so you'd have to go retroactively back several years.
I think when I did some work looking at last year's budget, that $137,000 should have been closer to like $850,000. So it's a substantial difference that should have been in that line last year. It would have increased your mill rate.
Yeah, it's actually 2 years, yeah, because the last time it looks like it was correctly recorded was 2021.
Correct.
And, I mean, it doesn't, other than, next year when we do the budget, we're gonna have hopefully actuals too. So it's really hard to judge budget to budget. it's really what our actuals are. And so I think next year with the finance office reorganization, we'll hopefully have a better comparison of previous years in our budget. So I just want to be careful when it's like published, you know,
Right.
that we have this huge increase and we really don't.
And we have one new TIF this year.
We do have one new
correct?
TIF this year, which is, again, it says approximate, based on an approximate mill rate, it's about a $66,000 increase over last year.
So one of the things that complicates this over the certainly last year, valuations play into how much taxpayers pay based on the value of their property. And because properties skyrocketed, even though the overall mill rate stayed pretty level, individuals paid more in taxes because the value of their property went up. And went up because of how properties are valued and the sale price of properties, all of those different factors. And that continues, that trend continues into this year. The reality is that over the last, if you look at the last 5 years of budgets, the mill rate has been very flat, with very small changes in mill rate, and last year was the anomaly with the valuations in terms of out-of-pocket expense. As far as the city is concerned, when you look at costs, we had this discussion with the school. It's the same thing on the city side, pretty equivalent in terms of where your costs are. The school, it's 80% personnel. And there are cost of living changes that took place. We have unions in the city. Those are negotiated in good faith by regulations that exist around that. And this was a year where those contracts, both at the school level, at the city level, there were several contracts negotiated, and those changes were made. Those are costs that are automatic. There's nothing that we can do short of eliminating lots of positions. That cost is part of the process. The other reality is the economy. The city is not immune from the costs of goods and services that have gone up, and as much as all taxpayers are dealing with it and all businesses are dealing with it, that's part of what we're seeing with this budget as well, is that the increases in terms of costs, that factors into the budget. I think that although you can argue in terms of with what has happened with the solar industry, but we knew going into this several years ago that the benefit was going to go somewhere, and the city acted on that, became part of it, and without that, our electric costs would be even much higher than what they are now. We are saving significant dollars because of that decision. So there have been some positive things that have been happening to try to mitigate some of this, but this is a year where there's just a collision of several issues that really put a lot of pressure. And we spent a significant amount of time, more time than I think the council has spent in many years, if ever, in terms of going through this budget and getting information and trying to identify what we could come up with in terms of keeping the budget as low as possible. And I think we had some great discussions. We're obviously not in 100% agreement on any issue, but we had the opportunity to really dive into the budget and look at it and consider the implications. The roads came up tonight. That's a significant, the roads committee put a recommendation forward to the council with a significant increase, $1.9 million of funding to support roads. And that's a place where $1.9 million is not going to go that far with the costs of construction. So we're faced with that too, is that in the past, I think it was my first year on the council, that was the place, big number, went to that, and cut it. And you can only do that for so long. You can only cut for so long. I think that the pandemic certainly didn't help, but we've been moving in the right direction in terms of looking at bonds and when those retire to take on new debt so that we're not just adding to our debt. The Finance Committee is working on that process, looking at capital expenditures and really trying to treat the city budget in a way that's planful. We've accomplished some of that as a city in terms of, you haven't heard over the last several years a big rush. None of this talks about 5 new trucks we have to purchase because winter's coming and we don't have any trucks. You're not seeing any of that because that's been planned better for. We've made those big purchases and staggered them. But it's a big number, and I think in a lot of ways it certainly makes you think in terms of what can be done. And I think that everything that we've come up with, we've cut everything we possibly can. I don't see any big numbers unless you want to cut the roads budget. We're not going to make a significant dent into what's been presented. So those are my thoughts in terms of where we've been during this budgeting process. I just wanted to share it with the entire community. What comments, suggestions?
I have some small suggestions. I handed out this form earlier. So if you recall back to our budget hearing on outside organizations, we got to a point where we had a really great discussion about what a good application process would look like and what I heard counselors saying was what they were interested in funding. Things like, are we addressing concerns of Ellsworth citizens? Are we giving appropriations directly to programs that benefit where there are gaps in what the city can offer? So with that in mind, I reached out to some of the outside organizations, and as you recall, on our last budget that was sent out, many of them stay stagnant from last year's appropriations to this year's, so fiscal year 23 to 24 for most of these organizations stayed at exactly the same, even though their requests increased. So with in mind what I heard you all requesting in terms of information, what are the programs, how many Ellsworth residents are affected by these programs, I compiled this comprehensive list. So first is Friends in Action. So we heard from them about what that money would go toward. So they're requesting $3,800 above what we have in our current listing, which is $5,000 in operational and $1,200 in health and social services. This is one of the larger increases. The rest are smaller. Eastern Area Agency on Aging is requesting just $350 above last year's request, which we've already put in the budget here. The MAS Homeless Shelter is requesting a good deal more, but I went in with our suggestions in mind from our budget hearing. Looked at 80% of people who use our services are Ellsworth residents, and some of the funding would go toward buildings and building upkeeps and other operational and administrative costs that we didn't necessarily want to fund. So I took a smaller request. I think I suggested 50% of their increase. Down East Community Partners we heard from last winter. I think the need is real there, and they justified that need with the increased costs of heating. So the rest are fairly similar. WIC as well increased pretty drastically. I suggested meeting in the middle between this year's requests and what the appropriations were last year. So with all these specific numbers in mind, I just wanted to kind of reframe how we think about these. I think we did that in the last meeting. Instead of talking about the city giving donations, we're really investing in services. So we talk about investing in our roads. We're investing in our community. We're allocating taxes where we think they should go. I don't have kids. I didn't go to high school here, but we're still taking my taxes and investing them in the schools. Likewise, I have some employees that walk to work. They don't own cars. but their taxes still go to the roads, and they're not necessarily using them. That's just kind of part of what we do. So when we talk about increased costs of fuel, of food, of electricity, that hits us all, but it really tends to hit the most marginalized in our communities, hardest of all. So they're part of our community. These organizations operate they're really quite lean, low overheads, a lot of volunteer hours, so our bucks really go pretty far with them. So this is my organizational recommendation for these outside organizations. It increases what's currently on our budget of $41,650 by $12,301.
Counselor Hanson.
I just really appreciate all the work you did on this, John, and I think as we spoke in our workshop meetings, I think we are all eager to have a different presentation next year so that we can compare these things, and I feel like you really answered a lot of those questions, and I just really appreciate that. I agree with you that part of our goal here is to help keep people who are going to fall through the cracks from falling through the cracks, and these organizations are amazing partners in helping the most vulnerable Ellsworth citizens. So $12,000 additional seems like a very, very small amount of money to help a lot of people, and so I support your proposition. And thank you.
I wanted to add as well, Heart of Ellsworth, I did not include on this list because I think that we had discussed increasing that to $8,250, but on the last version I saw it was only.
Yes, I had it flopped in the wrong line, but I've corrected it on my version that will finalize hopefully this evening. So I'd have that at $8,250.
Okay.
So my only question with what you're proposing is, I'm just not familiar enough with WIC, if that is a private 501c3 organization, is it fully funded? Because the services are services that are funded by the government. So I'm having a hard time figuring out, are they delivering services that are not under that rubric? SNAP benefits are not, that's not a private, they're not raising
Right.
funds, they're receiving that. So to give, I'm not familiar with it. So that's been my question from the beginning, and I'm just not comfortable increasing allocation without knowing what type of organization it is. And we didn't really get a lot of detail.
Yeah, we didn't hear from them specifically either. I don't know if anybody can speak to WIC more than I can.
Looks like they're covered under maine.gov, so.
Yeah,
would it be-
WIC is a program.
Right, right.
And so I just don't know the entity that these funds are going to. And since they didn't present, I don't know where those dollars are going, what they're supporting.
So the organization in Washington and Hancock counties is Maine Family Planning. And so in this county, it looks like they provide free nutrition and formula packages to pregnant or nursing women and their children. Also nutrition education and access to dietitian and health screening support.
Yeah, so I still question in terms
Yeah.
of where they get their funding.
This is one I didn't hear back from specifically,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And I apologize for the heat. It's a technique. I figure the hotter it gets, the shorter the meeting is, but everybody wanted cooler air, so now you're stuck here till 12. You wanted the heat. Consequence.
Great.
Other comments, recommendations?
I appreciate what you did too. I don't, this is a definitely a tough one because we don't have a process where, I mean, people that came and spoke to us, but it's, and the applications that we have, but it's something that I do hope that we do a better job with. But I other than WIC, I know of all of these organizations, and I agree with you on, I don't with the WIC because it is a state program, but the others. I do, and I appreciate the work you did on this.
If we remove the increase, looks like we hold steady at 1,500 from last year. Yeah, and an application would have definitely been helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that would change your total increase. Whoops.
$8,700.
$8,700.
So total for that line item would be $50,350.
Yeah.
8,700. 50.
To come up with a new total of 51,550.
I just want to make a comment that this is my second year on city council, and compared to last year, we did many more budget workshops this year, and although it was exhausting to come here that many times, I just felt like that was a much better process, and I really appreciated how careful we were with each of the individual budgets.
And also, my comment about things being wrong for the last couple of years, for the staff to step up like they did, with the necessity of creating a budget for us, without a lot of financial help from, I think they've done a really, really good job for doing that, and do appreciate it.
Councilor O'Connor.
May not agree with the expenses and the numbers, but I just would like to say I believe it was your idea, Mr. Chairman, to start the process early and put 2 meetings a week so we had breathing room. Last year, it seemed that we had less breathing room than we had this year, to your point. And I appreciate starting early and diving right in and learning what we could learn. And we had a month at the end where we could breathe a little bit and digest some of that. And I appreciate starting early.
We're gonna have to start even earlier next year, because
Yeah.
we can't move the election on.
Yeah.
Manager Mosher, I don't know if you can answer this question. One of the only question that, for me, that remains, and it's not, this is, as I say this is not a proposal to reduce the budget. I just want to understand where it's being allocated. And that is with the roads, is we allocate a lot, and those projects, part of the challenge with those projects is that many of the projects require engineering, or some of the projects require engineering. Some have total rebuild, some are just paving. They all require contracts. And so if the dollars aren't appropriated for the fiscal year, contracts can't be entered into. And so some of the work that takes place in the spring may actually go out to bid in the winter. And if the money isn't there, then you can't put that out to bid. And it turns into that cycle of not being able to do anything. And so just in terms of, we're in the construction period, one of the peak period. With last year's, we have a number of projects that are underway using funds from last budget. Are we in a position with that 1.9, I don't need details, but just that 1.9, will that be utilized to be able to get those projects going so that we will have projects just moving and seeing some change in the roads? Or are we budgeting that we're gonna end up with a lot of fund balance and projects not even getting off so can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, so our funding from last year has been expended. When we budgeted last year, our paving prices went up astronomically. So what we had budgeted for was dramatically cut into what we could actually accomplish based on what we had for funding. There is, the upper light is scheduled to be paved soon, and there was one other project from last year's budget that's still in the works to be done in the next couple of weeks, depending on Northeast Paving's schedule. The weather the last couple of weeks has really been detrimental, but, so those projects are still online to be completed from last year's budget. This year's budget, as you stated, does include some engineering and some other costs. So it's not like the full 1.9 is gonna go straight into, road projects, fixing potholes and those types of things. But some of the more significant, Water Street is one complaint we heard echoed this evening. Foster Street, so those are some of the projects that are scheduled within that 1.9. Now, they won't all get done this fall. Our window of opportunity to do paving and to do construction type work is relatively short. So they will schedule as many as they can for the fall, and then try to catch up with anything left over in the spring. And again, with a lot of that, especially with the paving specific, we're somewhat at the mercy of Northeast Paving and their scheduling and being able to work in to get certain projects done. But the 1.9, as you stated, it's a significant increase over what we've budgeted in the past years, and certainly I've taken a different approach when it comes to local roads, in the sense that my predecessor was very reluctant to do any of the work and tried to catch it all up at the end, because he was concerned that those funds would be needed for other purposes. Since I've been the city manager, we've been more aggressive with scheduling and getting the projects in the hopper to get them completed as soon as the budget is passed. So I think that we'll see a few projects through to completion with this amount of money, but realistically, it's not enough that you're going to see that needle move dramatically when it comes to complaints about our roads. And we've talked recently about the potential more long-term, looking at bonding and looking at taking out debt in order to address some of the more glaring issues with our roads. But our staff works really hard to coordinate with MDOT for MPIs, and to search out other funding sources to make sure that we can get some of these projects done without all of the burden falling on the taxpayers. And Oak Street is slated in the MDOT work schedule for a complete rebuild. So right now, we're getting all of our ducks in a row to do the drainage and any other water and wastewater that needs to be done while that road is being constructed by Maine DOT. And that construction phase is not any cost to the city. High Street is on their work plan for FY24 for a mill fill from the upper light all the way up to the top of Beckwith Hill. So that's something that Maine DOT is doing, and there's a lot of work that we can piggyback on with them as they bring that process through. Of course, Christian Ridge is an MPI with Maine DOT, and then a lot of these other sort of smaller side roads that our highway department tries to focus on, getting those smaller projects done. We have a drainage project on Water Street, right at the base of Foster Street, and we've tried 3 years unsuccessfully to bid that out and get that project completed, and we're at the point now where our highway crew is going to commit to doing that project, and there'll be paving that will go along with that, and Foster Street, which has seen some pretty significant deterioration over the last couple of years, and has had some significant construction taking place with Oriole Way and Oriole Senior Housing, introducing drainage. As you also know, we have the pump station, which is being constructed or reconstructed on Water Street, and also we're in the early stages of doing the one on High Street. So there'll be some interruption and some need to get into paving and roads for those projects as well. And with all the development, we recently saw Route 3 opened up at the top of Beckwith Hill for water and storm and wastewater to go into the new development up there on Route 3. So all of these projects, lead to additional problems with the roads, right? Now you got a big, divot in the road up at the top of Route 3 where they opened the road back up. So, you heard earlier from Mr. Blanchett about Park Street, and that's our Birch Ave. And that's a work in progress. That was never completed last year because we ran out of time. And now this year, they'll be going back up and doing some additional work there, ditching, drainage, and eventually a final layer of pavement, and possibly, I know there's been a lot of conversation about some strategic curbing, not curbing the entire length of the road, because that would require an entire rebuild of the whole road, but doing some strategic curving that will help reduce that water flow. So I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think it's important that the public understands that there's a lot of work being done. We utilize all of the resources that we can to leverage funds and get funding sources to assist. But there's going to continue to be bumpy roads, and we'll continue to hopefully the city will continue to prioritize it. And after a few years of spending a significant amount of money, I think you're going to see progress. But it's going to take a couple years. They didn't deteriorate overnight. They can't be repaired overnight. So,
Thank you. That's helpful. Other comments, questions?
I just had one question. I don't want to reduce the library budget, but I did have a question. They increased their electricity to $15,000, and we had talked in one of the budget meetings that we were going to let them know about, because they do receive the subsidies.
they do solar credits, yeah.
Solar credits. So I just was wondering if that was ever looked at.
I don't know that we ever looked at that specifically for them. We did budget some revenue for solar credits, correct? So,
Okay, so you offset it that way.
yeah,
Okay.
so we'll offset it that way as opposed to lowering their specific electrical bill.
Okay.
And I think that was just because the Board of Trustees had already kind of adopted her budget as presented, and I didn't want to make her go back just for
Nope,
a small
that's fine,
change.
as long as it's in there, I don't, something we can work on next year.
And next year, we'll have a much more clear picture dealing with solar credits next year, because we'll have a full year's worth of experience to be able to look at our bills and see exactly what we paid for in solar credits and what that translated into savings on our bills, and then we'll have, year over year to be able to compare. So we'll see, okay, this is what our bill we were spending before now, this is what we're spending with the solar credits, and be able to more accurately forecast what that savings is. This year, most of the departments, we just dropped the electrical a couple $1,000s just to reflect the solar credits, because we don't have that comparison yet, because June
June
this
bills.
month is the full year.
Is a full year.
So we don't really just have that experience to be able to accurately predict. So, which is why we're modest in our conservative in our estimate reductions, and then put a little bit of additional revenue in there to
Just in case.
kind of close that gap.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just make one more general comment. Just in terms of the budgeting process, been through a number of these now. And what's challenging is that in a community of this size, everybody has their own priorities, their own interests. And I can tell you that when there's a proposal to reduce significantly any part of the budget, there's always been, it doesn't matter what the issue has been, when that reduction has been made, there's been pushback from the community in terms of saying, don't cut that, cut this. And then if you go try to reduce that, another group will come in and say, well, don't cut that, cut this. It's part of what we have as a community in terms of, I think to your point, Councilor Stein, is that we all benefit in different ways from the city. We all have our own interests in terms of what moves the city forward and how to best use taxpayer dollars. I can say with a lot of confidence that everybody sitting around this table had the same interest. No one here is looking to put a burden on the taxpayers of this community. And although we don't agree 100% on what those budget items should look like and what the amount should be, to me, there's always been that shared perspective of trying to put together a budget that reflects the best for this community, to make the city of Ellsworth the best it can be, to support the citizens, to support the guests that come into it, to support our youth, and just make this a better community overall. And we're never going to have 100%. That's what this process is all about. But I think if you have people sitting around this table and you have the involvement of the community who are all interested in making the community better, you come up with the best budget you possibly can. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is it more expensive than we would like? I think yes, it is. I think that will always be the case. We would always like to lower taxes. But at the end of the day, I think we have to look at what kind of community we want. Are we moving the community forward? And if we're not, let's have conversations about that. Let's keep working towards the positive, and not get caught up in the negative aspects, because you can pick apart every single budget. You can throw labels at and name call and project your anger around it. But I believe that everybody here is invested in making the city the best it can be. So Tony left at the wrong time.
She's gonna go get copies of the.
Oh, okay. I figured she was doing something important for us.
What's the amount to be raised by taxes now, Nate?
What I have right here, I'll confirm with Tony, but she had on the original one was the 24,253,391. And then now we have 24,570,558. That's what you mean.
And that includes the changes that we discussed.
I believe so. I'll confirm with her.
Did you think I couldn't follow the instructions we had to help?
That's an example. So I've made changes to outside organizations based on Councilor Stein's recommendations and some of the TIF adjustments. I'm handing you a new resolution with all of those changes shown. So the total is $24,570,558.
That's all part of it. Oh, there we go. What was that 24,000?
25 million, that was before we fixed the TIF stuff.
Oh, you moved it around?
Yeah.
Because earlier you said it was around 25,201, 403.
Yes, and then we made some other TIF adjustments. I still had Janet's budget in there.
And then debt service, I believe, was.
And debt service came down.
500 and 1,000.
Can I make a motion?
You can.
Move to approve the budget for $24,570,558.
Second.
We have a motion and seconds. Further discussion? Councilman.
I think we also need to add the additional resolutions as part of the.
Yes, which I did not print because those haven't changed, so whatever I had emailed you earlier for the water, capital and wastewater.
We do each one separately, right?
Is it separate? Okay.
This is just general.
Mm-hmm.
I
think we can anyways.
Yeah, my first rodeo.
As long as it gets done.
I think we'll take them separately, just so that it's really very clear. Unless there's objection. Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second to adopt the budget as presented and amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Budget passes. I'm looking for the next.
It's just the further resolution
Yep.
for the restaurant. Do you want me to make that? Do this. And it's further resolved for motion that the City of Ellsworth Council approves the budgets for the following departments in the amount specified: the capital improvement budget, $2,407,842. Public library budget, is that netted? With revenues of $620,798 and expenditures of, that's not right. That's wrong. Do you have that budget for the? Is the net on the public library 703,798?
Yes.
620.
Or 625,898?
This,
625,898.
this is on the packet.
This is.
Right, so 625,898 is their city appropriation. The rest of those are the rest of their revenues for a total of 703,798.
Okay. All right, what, Tony, you got that in record, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Water Department, revenues of $1,360,072 and expenditures of $1,280,232. Wastewater Department of revenues of $2,098,000, expenditures of $1,981,340, right? That's it.
Motion and second. Further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. So, councilors, I want to thank you, as we mentioned earlier, in terms of the time that you committed to this budget and the process, and I also absolutely want to thank Madam Clerk and the rest of the staff, the amount of time that was put into this, both during the meetings, attending the meetings, as you saw tonight, being able to rapid fire back to us in terms of information and getting it straight and keeping us straight. Manager Mosier, for your attention to the budget from the beginning, in terms of being responsive to presenting a responsible budget, but then being willing to go back and make changes throughout the process and being open to that. Your transparency in bringing city department leaders to the table to share their information, it very much is appreciated. What made this process possible, and as difficult as it is, having that openness was very much appreciated and very important to the process. Now, one of the things I just want to put the council on notice for is that this budget has passed with the assumption that the referendum, the school portion of the budget, is going to pass. That's included as part of this overall budget that we just passed, which obviously impacts the mill rate. If the school budget does not pass, we will need to have an emergency meeting to do a continuing resolution in order for the city to operate, because we will not have a budget, and we will have to revisit this in July. And there was only literally 2 days from the vote to the new year. So just be aware that if it doesn't pass, we will have to hold an emergency meeting to do a continuing resolution on this budget. I just wanted you to be aware of that, the community to be aware of it, and we'll just see where things go from here. Any final thoughts that anybody has on the budget?
Real quick, I just would like to echo that sentiment towards the staff, and certainly Tony Dyer for her assistance with putting this budget together, and Counselor Moat for her assistance as well. But it's my third budget and my third different financial person doing the numbers, so it makes it challenging at best. But I'm hopeful now with the staff that we have in the finance department, and certainly the interest that the council seems to have with the process going forward, that we can make it much more efficient and a much easier process for everyone involved. And I would just really ask that, citizens get involved. I mean, we held how many budget meetings and, had very little to no citizen participation. And I'm certain that people are going to wake up tomorrow and hear these figures and be angered or incensed by it. And, the opportunity for them to have participated and to have provided us some guidance as to where their wishes are, has come and gone. And in the future, I would encourage everyone to participate early and often, because that's the only way we can truly have a budget that's going to reflect the entire community's desires and wishes, as opposed to a budget that, the 7 people sitting at this table have kind of choked down. So, it's like a mediation. As long as everybody leaves unhappy, then it works. So that's kind of how this budget is.
All right. Item 17, turn off the air. No, just I was just seeing if you were listening. Item 17, discussion regarding Franklin Street Parklet, sponsored by Councilor Hanson.
Yes, that is me. It's not actually about the parklet itself. It's about the, of course, because we closed the road, there are some requirements for what we need to do in terms of signage, to tell citizens that the road can't be driven down. But it looks terrible as you drive down Main Street. And my request was to just bring this here to try to look at the DOT rules and see if there's a more attractive way to solve the problem. Because the parklet is so great and it's so cute, and I've had a variety of people come tell me how much they like it. But it's just too bad that when you drive past it, you're like, oh.
So, in response to Councilor Hanson's questions, I have spoken at length about the issue with Lisa, a Public Works Director, and long before you ever raised it as a concern, it was something that we discussed as staff. The very first year we put up the parklet, and then again each subsequent year, because much like you and others, the signage and the other requirements are somewhat unsightly. And we'd like for it to be as attractive as possible. There are some potential options that we can explore. Of course, everything comes along with funds. What we've used out there is what we have available to us without spending any additional funds. Just a little bit of an explanation as to why the prettier, if you will, barricades, more attractive barricades, are back behind the crosswalk, and the reason for that is we didn't want to set those on the backside of the crosswalk and have vehicles run the risk of potentially turning and immediately running into a concrete barricade. So the barricades and the road closed sign are kind of the wake-up call for anyone who thinks they're going to be turning right or left onto Franklin Street, that they can't do that. The road closed sign is required. Barricades are a requirement. In fact, the national standard requires 3-tier barricades, which are basically like a wall. It's like, instead of just having the one, they want you to have 3. But where it's a low speed, not heavily traveled roadway, we felt comfortable with the single barricade in order to be able to achieve the same goal. We have looked into, and I think she provided you some photographs of those singles, those type of lining the roadway with those as opposed to the barricades. We still would require a road closure sign, but we could utilize something like that instead of barricades. And Lisa is looking into the cost of those, yeah. And ultimately, again, we need to block that road because you don't want people turning on and then getting onto the crosswalk and then seeing the concrete barriers and then be like, oh, and trying to back out onto Main Street would be problematic at best and extremely dangerous. So that's the purpose for having the sort of the two-tiered approach to the road closure. And again, there's perhaps some slightly more attractive ways that we could do it. We've just done it this way the last 3 years because it was the equipment that we have on hand.
It's different on this side. Is there a reason it can be one way on one side and?
Well, this
It's
side
not Main
is not a
Street.
road. You're coming out of the parking lot to access it, and the throughway of Store Street is significantly less traveled than what you have on Main Street and/or Franklin Street for that matter. The vehicles coming off of Franklin Street across Main.
Councilor O'Hara.
I'm not making a suggestion, I'm asking a question. Do the rules change and if you close it permanently? I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying, what does it do to the city? What does it do for road closure signs, permanent posts? I'm not suggesting, I'm asking that in general.
Yeah, if we discontinued the road, which is a process that you can go through where we have to have public hearings and so forth, then it would no longer require a road closure because it wouldn't be a road any longer. This is a temporary closure, so we open it back up in October, and then people are traversing it again. So in order to maintain the safety of the period that is closed, we need those closure signs. And like on this backside, there is a road closed sign. We don't have any barricades, but the stone, the cement barricades are right on the roadway. So again, but you're not getting the traffic turning in to Franklin Street like you would get off of Main Street. So if we were to bump those planter concrete barricades onto the outside of the crosswalk, the potential for vehicles to turn into that, to turn in and perhaps collide with those concrete barriers is much greater on the Main Street side than it is on the back side here, the Store Street side, which is why the decision was made originally to do the concrete barriers just straight across as opposed to the orange and yellow barricades that you see out front.
It has been a recurring discussion in the Recreation Commission as well about a permanent closure and what that could look like and the safety concerns. Obviously, the fire and police access would be an issue, but not insurmountable, I think Manager Mosher has said. And thoughts of doing like the tree lighting ceremony and other winter events in that space as well. So the Rec Commission has talked about and is excited about the notion of keeping that conversation going, about making it permanent.
What about the Heart of Ellsworth? What's their position?
Well,
We'll give you time to come up with one.
what's that?
We'll give you time to come up with a position.
Thank you. So I'll just dial the conversation back, and I will not be up here for long, but I will dial the conversation back to 2017 when Heart of Ellsworth did the first road closure for an event. The purpose of Taste of Ellsworth was not only to bring folks together and to celebrate our community before the start of the summer season, but a lot of it had to do with showcasing that space, what it would look like when there were trees in there and it were actually to be a park. I think it's safe for me to speak for the board and to state that we believe as a downtown organization that we would like to see that space become permanently closed, and for that to become a park, that it marks sort of the center of of downtown. We hear a lot of people that comment, whether they're visitors from away or people that live here, you know, Ellsworth is like Gilmore Girls. For anybody, I've never watched it, but for anybody who knows, it's a thing, and I think it bows as a compliment, and I think that it, like I said, I've never watched it, but I think it perfectly encompasses, you know, what people think of our city. And we were once known, I think our tagline was the friendly city, Ellsworth was, and I think a space for people to gather where people are always able to use that place no matter what the season is. I think it sort of brings back that whole feeling and sense of place, which is a big part of what Heart of Ellsworth is all about. So thank you for asking. Thanks.
Is there a time when police and fire ever use that anymore anyway?
Police, not so much. I know the fire has concern about being able to, it's kind of their quickest route. We've had many discussions about it because I don't really view it as a very safe route to be traversing the parking lot and going down onto that road. So I think there's room. I think the biggest pushback we've had about closing it permanently, outside of the loss of parking and the citizens who utilize it as a shortcut to try to get over to State Street and avoid traffic control devices, which is illegal, but is from highway department and plowing, because it becomes, it's a useful avenue for them during the winter months for plowing both of the parking lot, Store Street, and Main Street. So I think that's probably one of the more significant issues that we would have to work through, probably more so than fire, because again, it's not really the safest route for the fire department to be going anyway.
Plow guys, they use that to plow.
To bring the snow off of Main Street up into the parking lot, rather than having to go all the way to the bottom of the hill, come up State Street and come into the parking lot. It's just a shorter.
There'd also be issues with snow removal in that area. If we were gonna use it all year as some sort of parklet, it'd be another duty for the highway department to get rid of that snow in that area as well, so.
Yeah, to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't push that on people downtown to do it. Or if they hire a private person, like, okay.
I'm just Googling Gilmore Girls.
It's a great show.
It is a great show.
So
Well,
that was a good thing.
I mean, it's sort of two questions. My question was just about the barricades, and I think the question about whether to close the parklet is an interesting one. But the information from the DOT or whatever that was from, it didn't really answer the question, like what is required. So I don't know if there's a way to get the answer to that.
You had that picture, that 3-tier one, right?
Yeah.
This is what is required by US DOT, is a 3-tier barricade, and we just have a single, so ours is just the one strip.
But but the stuff in there didn't say, we, the DOT, require X and such for this kind of road for, it just sort of gave examples.
Yeah, it's not DOT, first of all, it's the
It's-
federal.
It's federal DOT.
It's
Yeah.
federal, and that's their standard expectation for a road closure. So that's, if you're going to close a road, that's the signage that they expect you to utilize.
But that wasn't really in the packet, like it didn't really specify, like that must be written someplace and that wasn't in the packet. It was like all these examples of roads where you have to make a detour, which really isn't this.
So if you,
I want to follow the federal rules,
Yeah,
but
and
I just was
so
not that clear.
I did it, so I went on the website that she provided you, for the Federal Bureau of Highway Safety, whatever and so like the guidance for the road street closed sign should be used in advance of the point where a highway is closed to all road users or to all but local road users. And then for road closed signage guidance, the road closed should be used when the roadway is closed to all road users except contractors, equipment, so forth and so on. The guidance, the road closed sign should be installed at or near the center of the roadway. on or above a type 3 barricade. That's where the type 3 barricade comes into. When it talks about barricades, barricades should be used on freeways and expressways or other high-speed roadways. Type 3 barricades should be used to partially close the road. Type 3 barricades used at road closures may be placed completely across the roadway or from curb to curb. So that's the federal standard that they expect when you are closing a road, that you'll utilize the signage and those barricades in order to notify the motoring public that the road's closed.
So, can I ask a question? So those are federal guidelines, right? So those aren't rules. Those aren't hard and fast rules. And this isn't a highway, it's a 25-mile-an-hour road that's got a lot of traffic on it. So, I mean, anyone that really goes to turn in there and doesn't see that it's those barricades even behind there isn't either paying attention. It's more of a safety issue for that rather than there's a high speed, someone's gonna turn it and go run someone over because they're gonna stop by then, you know, honestly. It's not like they're going high speed. So it is a safety issue and I get that. I just wonder if, it's kinda like when we made Beckwith Hill one way, put all these signs, put all these barricades, they went right through it anyway, honest to God, because the GPS told them to. But isn't there some way that we can nicely put something across it, even if it's planters or something that people can see that they can't drive through, rather than those barricades saying the road is closed and all of these things? You know,
That's what I'm
something
asking.
that's nicer looking, that is going to stop them unless they want to run over them. But if we buy big planters, plop them across the road, 3 of them, and across there, it'll look nice with the and show off the rainbow crosswalk. It'll look nice with the parklet. Anybody that drives through that has got to not be paying attention. I mean, I don't think that those big roads, a federal highway rule is not really for Franklin Street extension and a 25-mile-an-hour zone. Just my opinion.
So would you be willing to go back and have that discussion with your team and see if there's some wiggle room to come up with something?
Yeah, we can, I mean, we can discuss it further.
I'd appreciate it. Just, I mean, it's just not a highway.
I was pouring concrete in the middle of an intersection in Hamden. It was the big barrels, 7 traffic cones, 3 big barrels, and a concrete mixer. And a lady took out the 3 big barrels, the 7 traffic cones, caught her bumper on the concrete mixer, and got stuck in the middle of the concrete that we just poured. So don't think for 1 second those planters that they're gonna see them and not hit them.
Well, but
And
here's the thing.
somebody's gonna get run over in that parking place if they don't do everything you can to make it visible.
What we have for that sign now isn't going to stop that person. I mean,
Exactly right, but if you're the one sitting at the table, you want more out there to make sure they can see it,
But if there
because
are concrete planters and you hit that concrete
Those-
planter because you are like hell-bent on
I
going
could
up that
push
whole
that
thing.
concrete planter from that front of that parking lot all the way up to this parking lot, I guarantee you.
I don't even think you could do that on a turn, though.
Yeah, you can do it.
He's talking
You'd
about
have
with
to
this
want
That
it.
concrete planter, probably 3 people can pick it up.
Council,
Could I just ask one thing? I think we're talking in 2 things. What can we do immediately, and what can we do in the future? And I'm wondering if in the immediate nature, if Jersey barricades, they make planters that go on top of them, so they're hard to push, but you could put the planter on top of them that fits over the Jersey barricade. I've seen it in several places. It might be a quick fix with the signage things on the barricade, but yet planter on the top, just as a quick fix while you work on the rest of it, something. I think you're talking about this season, and I kind of pushed it into next season, and I didn't mean to do that, but if there's some easy fix, short money that might address it for this season, and I don't know if you can put them on the Main Street side of the crosswalk to help with, because, not that you couldn't push a barricade, but that's what they're made for.
Thank you. So part of the city's benefit being part of the main downtown center and the city being an affiliate community of the main downtown center, we have access to resources of other Main Street and other affiliate communities and other communities in general around the state. And I think that perhaps if the city is interested, we could use our resources and not have to invent the wheel here. Perhaps maybe even be able to come up with, I don't know, maybe even some solutions that wouldn't cost the city any money. And that we could harvest those, if you will, from Ann Ball and Sylvie PK, who came to present earlier this year. Because there are tons of other downtowns around the state that have done this. So if that's of interest, I'm happy to find solutions, potential solutions.
That'd be great if you come up with
That
some
would be
ideas.
fantastic idea, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I will go back to staff. We'll reach out to DOT and their leadership and see if we can come up with something that is more appealing. That meets, a certain level of safety, because I think we do have to be mindful about safety and the fact, to Jean's point, that people behind the wheel do some insanely not so smart things.
When I drive down High Street in my big pump truck that sits way up here, about half of the people driving down High Street are still playing with their phones. I mean, they're not paying attention anymore.
One question. Thus far, has there been close calls, major problems?
Well, yeah, today we had 2 people park on the crosswalk.
Oh, that's nice.
2 separate people, because they moved the cones and pulled their car in there and parked on the crosswalk. And we had 2 separate times they had to have police
That's
officers
barricade.
go down
Moved
there.
all those barricades and all those sandbags?
No, they moved the cones that are on the, if you're looking down there, they moved the cones that are on the right-hand side, pulled right in, and parked right on the crosswalk. And we'd have officer go down 2 separate times and have them move their vehicles.
But I cooperate.
And it's not like there's no parking here at the end of June.
It was close to where they needed to go, so
But there hasn't been any,
we haven't had any accidents.
any close calls with, yeah.
But there could be.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder what
yeah.
state the
All right.
license plate.
Yeah, okay.
We're gonna move on to the rest of your agenda.
I was like, I want to go home, but these are all
No,
my
these
items.
are all yours.
Take it out.
Item 18, discussion regarding a request to the Hancock County Commissioners for ARPA funding, sponsored by Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, okay. That one was, well, we got the agenda for whenever the Hancock County Commissioners meet, which does anybody know how often do they meet? Is it quarterly?
Every other week,
Every other
2 weeks.
Or it's every other?
Or is it every month?
Okay. Anyways, I don't know why
I'll
we
find
got
out.
that. I don't know why we got that one agenda, but somebody in Hancock County was making a request to utilize ARPA funding, and I remember that when we had our presentation from the Maine Municipal Association guy about ARPA funding, he basically said, you guys didn't actually get that much money, Ellsworth, but Hancock County got a lot of money, and you were a big part of Hancock County, so you should be asking them for their money. And I think it was maybe Dale's idea, or that you had thrown out the idea of maybe asking them for help with what do you call it when you have to redo the track?
They need to rebuild the whole thing.
Rebuilding the track. So it just made me think that we should be thinking about how to make a request and just getting on top of that now and not waiting. So that was what my,
Do you want to answer that one?
So Councilor Beal.
So the Finance Committee has been actually discussing that. We wanted to make a recommendation to the council of what to do with the remaining ARPA funds, and we went and looked at many projects that could be used in the city of Ellsworth, and we spoke with the school department about their needs also, and we did come up that the track and the lighting for the track is a totally community and actually regional project. Obviously, the schools use it. Schools from outside of Ellsworth use the track. Nonprofit organizations use the track in the center of it for fundraisers, and it's definitely used by people outside of Ellsworth for walking and exercise. The entire county uses that area. It's a great track. So we have this, and that is our recommendation, is to use the remaining funds and to ask the Hancock County Commissioners for funding, and Manager Mosier and Superintendent Bowles have been working at trying to have a estimate on the costs, and then looking at putting together a proposal to go to the county commissioners
Yeah, great.
to do that.
Perfect.
Well, that is all then. That item is settled. Check. So, my last item is.
Wait, I have to officially announce.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
you
thought
can
you just
do
said
it.
I could take the whole thing.
I have
And the new mayor, and the mayor for next year is.
That's right.
19 appointment of an Arbor Commission. Counselor Hanson.
Yes, okay. So Tabitha White is going to come present, so actually this is sort of a two-part thing. One is, Tony printed this out for all of you, that we actually have a tree ordinance in our charter that indicates that we have to establish an Arbor Commission. The Arbor Commission shall consist of 9 individuals appointed by the City Council, and the purpose of the Arbor Commission is to undertake projects supporting the planting, maintenance, removal, pruning of trees on streets or other public sites. So anyways, we don't have an Arbor Commission, and as Tabitha told us at a previous City Council meeting, we should have one. And part of the benefit of having one is that we can then apply for a, I'm sorry, I lost the name of it. Project Canopy grant. So Tabitha's going to teach us a little bit about that, but my request is that we appoint an Arbor Commission, or that we at least say we're going to request submissions for people being on an Arbor Commission.
We plant the seed for an Arbor Commission.
I will plant the seed for an Arbor Commission.
That was good.
There it is.
Might be late, but
Which will then allow us to apply for grants such as Project Canopy,
Which we have actually
which we have,
We
right?
have
applied
done,
for and
yeah.
gotten.
Yes, this is a new iteration of something we've gotten in the past.
Thank you so much. All right, good evening, counselors, and thank you for your time tonight. You've saved the best for last, which is awesome. And a special thank you to Casey Hansen for adding me to this evening's agenda. My name is Tabitha White, and I am here on behalf of Green Ellsworth to discuss the City of Ellsworth's tree ordinance and Arbor Commission it mandates. A little about me and my unique qualifications to be standing here in front of you this evening with this ask. I was born and raised here in Ellsworth. I have been a licensed arborist for 13 years. I graduated from the University of Maine in Orono with a bachelor's in forestry. After graduation, I was the planting coordinator for the City of Boston for 5 years. I moved to New York City for a job as a procurement forester, where I was in charge of procurement and distribution of all the street trees for the City of New York from 2013 to 2016. And with the opportunity of buying my childhood home, I moved back home to Ellsworth, where I worked as the procurement and yard manager for Atlantic Landscape Construction. I am currently partnered with the Garden Artisans in Trenton, where I continue to procure and sell trees. And since 2017, I am volunteered as an expert in urban forestry and arboriculture for Green Ellsworth. I became the chair of the Trees Subcommittee, which is a subgroup of the Land Action Team specifically focused on increasing Ellsworth's tree canopy and developing an urban forestry plan for the community. And I am happy to report to Council that Ellsworth has been designated as a Tree City USA for the second year in a row. And to date, much of this activity has led to our Tree City status. To date, much of our activity has led to our Tree City status, which has been led by Green Ellsworth volunteers and our partner organizations, the Ellsworth Garden Club and Frenchman Bay Conservancy. And as with many other local communities who have enjoyed such a designation, communities as small as Castine and as large as Bangor, the City of Ellsworth needs to take more of a role, a leadership role, when it comes to planting and maintenance of trees on the city streets and public spaces. If we are going to be able to maintain our Tree City USA status, we want and create and maintain the kind of community its citizens want, we need to have a designated tree commission, professionally qualified tree stewards, and plans for the management of city trees. And lucky for us, the city does have a tree ordinance, Chapter 43, dating back to the 1990s. You can refer to the copy of this ordinance in your packets. And Section 1 provides for an arbor commission of 9 people. It charges them with overseeing the planting, maintenance, and pruning of trees on streets and elsewhere in the community. Section 2 talks about developing a master tree plan focused on guiding planting and maintenance on an ongoing basis. And Section 3 discusses what constitutes abuse and mutilation of city trees and what can be recovered from the vandalizer by the city. Currently, however, this ordinance has been overlooked as the city has neither a commission nor a plan. This failure to follow through with what is mandated in this tree ordinance is definitely not because of a lack of public interest or because of a lack of the public's failure to prioritize our urban canopy. In fact, retreeing our city streets, maintaining existing trees, and enhancing the city's tree canopy figured prominently as high priorities for Ellsworth citizens in over 40 Green Ellsworth consultations with the community around sustainability goals. As noted with the accomplishments list in the handouts, the community has also demonstrated its willingness to engage in activities to move the dial forward with our urban canopy. It has been the community that has surveyed and mapped Ellsworth's downtown core for existing trees and possible new tree locations. It has been the community who raised $20,000 to plant 13 trees at City Hall, to prune the existing crab apples at City Hall, which you'll see photographs of in your handouts as well. And that $20,000 went to plant trees at the old Rite Aid on High Street. And to the city's credit there, they supplied the heavy machinery and labor hours that helped to make this High Street project a success. And as someone who regularly prices jobs that uses heavy machinery and labor, I can attest to the value that our Public Works Department brought that day with its people and equipment. It's been the community that broke ground at the Jordan Homestead Tree Nursery in 2022, where we have planted 160 trees out of 500 planned for this nursery, all of which are designated for the Ellsworth downtown core. It's been the community through Green Ellsworth that's developed and regularly updates recommended plant lists for specific types of plants, such as trees, shrubs, and perennials, for types of properties, residential, commercial, public, and for a wide variety of habitats, sun, shade, wet, dry, roadway, foundation plantings, etc. And it's been the community in the context of Green Ellsworth that has developed a draft plan that could be adapted as a master tree plan as the second item in the tree ordinance. This plan can help jumpstart this commission, fulfill the requirements of the ordinance, help us maintain our Tree City status, and help us to bolster the content relating to our urban canopy in the comprehensive plan. The city would obviously need to make a public call for interest in serving in such a commission, but as an indication of possible interest and expertise in our handout, we have included a list of 9 very well-qualified candidates who have indicated a willingness to serve on the Ellsworth Arbor Commission. As with the Green Ellsworth Tree Committee, this can be expected to be a very hands-on commission. People genuinely prepared to take leadership, develop groups of volunteers to assist in the management of our urban canopy, and organize projects and events in aid of that effort. Most particularly, they would also assist with grant applications and fundraising. At the back of your handout, you can have a look at a fundraising brochure that was created in the 90s as an indication of what the Arbor Commission could accomplish today. In 2021 and 2022, the Ellsworth community nonprofits were the ones applying for project canopy grants that have funded tree plantings and irrigation for the tree nursery. But we need the city to apply for every year, just as many other Maine communities do, which helps these communities to fund their own urban forestry programs. In 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act allocated an unprecedented $1.5 billion to invest in our urban greening through the tree plantings and other efforts across the country. This money, which we can access through the state's Project Canopy program, is a large part of the answer to the often proclaimed, how do we fund this question. Rather than being an added burden for the city staff, the Arbor Commission could be a model for how commissions can lighten the load for staff with access to volunteer, aka free, professional expertise and a team of community members prepared to take leadership in getting the job done well, and contributing to the long-term beauty and sustainability of our community. Such a commission has the capacity to multiply a staff member's time and expertise by 9. Ellsworth is naturally a tree city. It exists because of the trees that grew here and the industry that generated. When all the land was cleared of trees, the people who had come to live here realized that Ellsworth wasn't a very pleasant place to live, so as many communities do, they planted beautiful street trees that were, for years, one of the most memorable and appealing things of our city. When those trees were all lost in the 70s and 80s from Dutch elm disease, citizens realized they needed to plant again and do a better job of caring for the trees. This led to the tree ordinance, the Chapter 43, and an initial group designated as the Arbor Commission. Some planting occurred, but there was no long-term follow-through with maintenance. And when significant investment in trees was made in the refurbishment of High Street, nearly all of the trees died because of a number of factors, but most particularly because there were no qualified arborists within the city staff and volunteer commissions to be responsible for developing and overseeing a plan for planting and long-term maintenance that works. I want to point out a few other mistakes that were and continue to be made by not having an arborist oversight. In this picture behind me, you can see an arborist would have known that during this initial install, the tree would interfere with the flagpole in the future, which is today, and it has become an issue before the city. Do we remove the tree? Do we move the flagpole? Both are expensive and totally were avoidable. An arborist would know that these tree guards must be removed before they strangle and kill these trees, which will be soon. An arborist would know that this is a mulch volcano and it can lead to the decline and death of a tree. Now more than ever, we are faced with more serious threats of our existing tree canopy. There is a real current and future threat of new diseases, invasive pests, and invasive trees. Now more than ever, we need the benefits of trees. That includes their beauty, and I refer to the photos of the crabapples in bloom this year around City Hall, which was the recent Green Ellsworth and citizen effort. However, we also need the cooling and warming effects of trees. We need their green infrastructure capacity to moderate stormwater runoff, a great example being Birch Avenue. Their ability to mitigate air and water pollution, as well as their potential to reduce damage to city streets and infrastructure. We need to do this kind of work all over Ellsworth. So council members, I am asking for you to advise the city manager to take steps immediately to constitute the Arbor Commission, beginning with a public call for interested and qualified participants. Their first task should be the development of an urban forestry management plan and a plan for grant applications. Thank you all again for your time this evening. I really appreciate it. Any questions?
Some of those trees look like they had the power lines like right directly above them.
Oh, yeah.
How's that gonna work?
Well, that's a really great question. Actually, we can make it so that the right trees get planted in the right places. We never want to plant a shade tree that's going to grow to 100 feet under power lines. We can control that, and we can make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. I have a whole set of guidelines already. I have been doing this for a long time, so I want to bring my expertise back to the city, and I know a lot of other people want to too.
I just saw that some of them look like, it's like. Right
Oh, I
up
know,
here. It's
and
like,
the awful pruning that they do with those. Yeah, and it makes it even more dangerous, so it's a waste of money, a waste of our resources. I don't want to waste our money or our resources.
Is this something that even requires a motion, or not really, because there's already an ordinance?
What are we
Is it just
trying to do?
Is it just a request, or do we need to vote on something?
Well, I think it's a request to start the process in terms of informing the community. At some point, the council will have to formally appoint the commission, so I think we can ask the manager to start the process in terms of getting interest, and then we'll go from there once we have names. And Thank you.
If we got the ball
Thank you
rolling
guys
now,
very
then-
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Then we would just need to bring back those
Yeah,
people and then vote on
what the
that.
process is, and
Well, I might also suggest that we take a look at this ordinance. I mean, 1991 was a long time ago, a lot has changed, so.
why don't we put it on the July, carry forward this item, put it on the agenda, unless there's well, let's put it on the agenda for an update, and then we can make a decision in terms of where it needs to go from there.
Maybe perhaps Green Ellsworth and I'm sorry.
Perhaps I could just mention that one of the first things that the commission could do is to revise its own ordinance. And perhaps you'd get the expertise there to work for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, item 20, council comments. Anybody wish to make a comment?
I'm hungry.
You're hungry?
Both of these girls.
Did you?
They've got knives under the table, and they won't let me talk. And that's a joke.
Yeah,
Not real nice.
sort of.
You're welcome to talk. It's your time.
I do have, I want to make one quick comment. I know it's late, but I'll be quick. I just want to respond to an earlier comment made during the citizens' comment. I completely understand personal opinion, but opinion does not translate into fact. And so I personally take offense to it being labeled that there was an illegal act that took place among the council with the decision around the police headquarters. That was a decision of a 5-2 vote. It was followed by, you can be disagreement in terms of whether or not some of the public felt there was enough information available. That can be certainly discussed. But as far as it being an illegal act, that was an opinion made by an individual. My opinion is it was absolutely not an illegal act, and the courts have made that decision and upheld that. So I just think it's important that if you have an opinion, express your opinion, but to put a label behind it, I think is really unfair, and particularly in the situation where there was another lease approved that evening as well. I've yet to hear any kind of reaction about that lease, although it was not the same sum of money. If the purpose was, as was presented by this individual this evening, why was that not put on the table? So I think we should be careful in throwing stones and labeling. We can have disagreement, and they're pursuing it any way that somebody feels, that's fine. Taking it to court, that's fine. It was not an illegal act, and that is an absolute fact. Anyone else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned.
I like both of them.